Hello everyone! Finally! Here I am with another Godzilla review. Thank you so much for being patient as this review kept getting put off while I waited for the movie to get here. Today we're going to take a look at the last of the 6 Millennium-era Godzilla movies, the 29th of the franchise as a whole, and a special 50th anniversary commemoration, 2004's Godzilla Final Wars. I was already curious about this one before, back when I first started this whole Godzilla review series, but the comments on the last Godzilla review really amped up the anticipation. That's what always happens whenever you guys say something like, oh, I can't wait for you to get to this one, because I'm like, okay, I'm not sure how you mean that, because it's really good, or because it's really bad. I'm still not sure. The movie starts with a massive information overload. The Prime Minister and company from the last two movies, not really, it's Akira Nakao and Koichi Ueda making cameo appearances but as different characters, are fighting Godzilla at the South Pole and manage to contain him. The audience is then informed over a dizzying montage about, first, the formation of a monster fighting force known as the Earth Defense Force, not the last movie's JXSDF, second, the emergence of a super strong mutant race, and third, the formation of a new mutant monster fighting force known as M Organization. This rigorous defense program comes in handy when a dozen kaiju surface and start attacking cities all around the world. Then a UFO shows up, and the aliens aboard make the monsters disappear. These aliens, who call themselves Exilians, insist that they're not hostile. They announce that there's a planet on a collision course with Earth, but with our cooperation, it can be stopped, and the Exilians will ensure peace and safety through a united universe. But we know how this is gonna go, right? The Exilians turn out to be not so friendly. They're actually using the monsters against the Earthlings to terrorize them into submission. The Exilians and their kaiju weapons must be defeated, and the only thing strong enough to do that is Godzilla. There's so much to talk about here. I have no idea where to start. My notes on this one are a mess, more of a mess than usual, because I was basically scribbling down notes without actually looking at what I was writing, because there was so much going on and I didn't want to accidentally miss anything. This movie was crazy, so much to take in. But I also don't know where to start because, well, my mind went through a few different revolutions while watching it. I started out thinking, oh, okay, it's one of the goofy ones, that's fine. And then I began to feel like, nope, this is too much. This is bad. Like, not even humorously absurd, just bad. I actually wrote down, quote, I think this is beyond the threshold of what I can take. And then, I don't know, somewhere around the halfway point, the sun poked through the clouds, and I started to have a good time again. Even though it was ridiculous, I went full circle. There are several things that initially put me off. First, I'm not fond of the way the prologue is edited. It's like an onslaught of imagery, almost impossible to take in all at once. That's followed by the main title sequence, which is cool and is a fitting celebratory compilation of some of Godzilla's greatest hits, mainly from the Showa era. Not so much attention given to the Heisei era in this movie. My problem with it is that it's overwhelming, and I could barely make out any of the names. This is where the prominent members of the cast and crew are supposed to be given credit, and well, the only name that I could clearly make out that seemed to be held just a fraction of a second longer was the title designer's name. That's funny. And then one of the first scenes of the movie proper is this lengthy martial arts training sequence. I am not into martial arts or any of that stuff. Not at all. And this movie has a lot of it. A lot. I appreciate the stunts and the athleticism and the hard work that goes into making these scenes. I just find them tedious. I find them tedious in the old movies. I find them tedious in movies that are made today, especially when they go on for too long, when there's too much flashing and blurred camera movement, and you can't tell what's happening, when the maneuvers are so bombastic and physics-defying that it doesn't feel real, and if it doesn't feel real, there's hardly any tension on the viewer's part. It's been a recurring theme that these Godzilla movies show the influence of whatever sci-fi movie was huge at the time, even if they sometimes lag a few years behind. The big influence here is The Matrix, which back in the early 2000s everyone was imitating. Granted, The Matrix itself had a heavy Japanese influence, so it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg, but there are echoes of The Matrix all over Final Wars, not just in the fighting style, but in the camera work and the wardrobe design with those long, swoopy leather coats, and in all the twirling and shooting, stuff like this. I don't remember The Matrix having quite so many funny sound effects, though. And the main guy, Ozaki, you can't tell me that my mom and I are the only people on the planet who think he's supposed to resemble Neo. Oh, there's a whole bunch of human stuff I didn't cover in my plot summary a couple minutes ago. We focus primarily on this character, Ozaki, who's with the M organization, but unlike other mutants who have a machine-like drive to fight, he has a will not just to fight, but to defend. He's assigned to guard a UN biologist who turns out to be a young, attractive woman, not at all what he was expecting, and of course, they get off on the wrong foot. That happens so many times in these movies. There's also her sister, a TV talk show host who helps them identify that certain people are being taken over by the Exilians. And there's Captain Gordon, played by Don Fry, a popular MMA fighter at the time of the movie's release, so not really an actor.
There are two things you don't know about the Earth. One is me, and the other is Godzilla.
Captain Gordon consistently speaks English even when everyone else is conversing in Japanese. Not awkward at all. Still better than being dubbed. Captain Gordon also gets the honor of dropping the title.
This is Operation Final War.
Well, close enough. Actually, Final War, singular, might make a little more sense from a semantic perspective. In addition to these main characters, there are also supporting performances and cameo appearances by veteran Godzilla actors, most notably Akira Takarada, Kumi Mitsuno, and Kenji Sahara. Kumi Mitsuno is a big-time fan favorite, and I especially enjoyed seeing Akira Takarada again, playing the UN Secretary General. Here he has the privilege of wearing a spiffy silver coat, fighting aliens with the best of them, and having his head burst open, a scene that contributes to this movie's PG-13 rating in the United States. I have no idea what Akira Takarada thought of all this. He is a legitimate actor, you know, not just some B-level nobody who was in a few monster movies, but I've always gotten the impression that he's a really good sport. But probably most people aren't coming to the movie to see the humans. They want monster action, and with this movie you definitely get it, although it may not always be quite what you're expecting. Our kaiju roll call, with the exception of some other monsters who only appear briefly in stock footage during the opening narration, includes Manda, Anguirus, King Caesar, Rodan, Gigan, Ebirah the Sea Monster, Zilla the 1998 Godzilla, Kumonga, Kamakuras, Manila, Hedorah the Smog Monster, Mothra, and Mysterious Monster X, later Kaiser Ghidorah. Woo! Let's break that list down with some commentary. I wasn't expecting to see Manda at all, especially not in one of the earliest scenes. I thought at first it was one of King Ghidorah's heads, separated from the body and taking on a life of its own. Whoops! Anguirus is one of my favorites, so I was happy to see him, and I like that they gave him a spotlight. But when did he acquire this new tumble roll trick? The cheeky answer is, when computers took over for Suitmation. I suspect the bulk of the effects here are computer-generated, which, King Caesar got a couple prominent shots, looking a little more dignified here than in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, but only slightly. I'm not a big fan of King Caesar. Rodan, another favorite, also has a lot of digital effects, which I admit did help make him even cooler. Gigan was another winner. He looked great and reminded me of all the things I liked about him before, at least when he stood still in a well-lit place long enough for me to see him. Unfortunately, in spite of his 21st century remodeling and then third act upgrade with new power tools, he turns out to be shockingly defeatable. He poses a serious threat for about a minute. So much for that. I was surprised that they included Ebirah, as I think he often gets left out of the discussion. I was even more surprised that he was the one they ended up featuring in an extensive human versus kaiju fight scene. Zilla is the only one that's a completely digital creation, and he looks terrible, possibly on purpose as a slight against him. Haters of Godzilla 1998 can gleefully watch their hero destroy the pale imitation in a matter of seconds. I was also surprised to see Kumonga and Kamakuras, but that was cool, made this seem like a real Showa-era reunion. I even found Manila endearing. He's not so horrendously ugly as he was in Son of Godzilla, and he gets to play a somewhat significant role here. Plus, the scenes of him wearing his seatbelt were cute. I wasn't expecting Hedorah either, since I had the impression that Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster was considered kind of a disgrace, one of the ones we don't talk about. But apparently this movie's director, Ryuhei Kitamura, was a fan of it, so here's Hedorah. Unfortunately, a lot of his footage ended up being cut, which makes one scene where Abira and Hedorah seem to be fighting particularly confusing. Mothra's here, that wasn't really a surprise. She's had a lot of appearances in the last several films. There's not really anything new about her. She plays a significant role in the third act. Monster X is the only new addition, but a good one. He arrives in a spooky scene, one of the creepiest moments in the whole Millennium series, I think. And then he transforms into, well, not exactly someone we know, but very similar. Oh yeah, and Godzilla's in it too. Stunt actor Tsutomu Kitagawa, who played Godzilla in all of the Millennium films except GMK, wore a slimmer, lighter suit this time for improved mobility, which explains why he seems a little different. Godzilla's character is also slightly different from his portrayal in other Millennium films, harkening back more to how he was in several films of the Showa era, the reluctant and churlish defender of Earth. Now, I was totally on board for seeing all these monsters in one movie, and in a sense, I got what I was hoping for, but it seems like they went to an awful lot of trouble and expense to bring some monsters back for very little screen time. It's cool, but it all happens so fast, I couldn't even digest one before another came along. This movie definitely calls 1968's Destroy All Monsters to mind. It basically is Destroy All Monsters for the early 2000s, with a smorgasbord of kaiju appearing all over the world and being manipulated by an extraterrestrial influence. Unfortunately, Final Wars suffers from the same disadvantage as that movie, in that you get hyped up to see all these monsters, and then most of them get minimal screen time, and only a small handful interact with each other. It's something I find disappointing about both movies. At 125 minutes, I really think it's too long, and yet it feels like it should have been longer to allow the monsters to do more. Even Godzilla gets precious little time to shine at his own 50th anniversary party. But another Showa-era movie that was obviously a major influence was 1965's Invasion of Astro Monster, or Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. Both movies star Akira Takarada and Kumi Mitsuno, who both also co-starred in Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, by the way. Both have a prominent role played by an American actor, there Nick Adams, here Don Fry. Both feature aliens who refer to themselves as Exilians, who demonstrate the power to basically beam up kaiju. And what I find most entertaining are the reproductions of certain costume pieces. The stiff high collar worn by the creepy Exilian general, played by Masato Ibu, and the thin sunglasses, or whatever kind of glasses these are, worn in both films by the Exilian controller. Let's talk about that controller. He's played by Kazuki Kitamura, who gives a super campy performance, but it's not a bad fit for this movie, which already has an abundance of cheesiness and corny one-liners, including this one I found especially groan-worthy.
Sorry, I'm a vegetarian.
And I don't know, the more screen time they gave this character, the more he grew on me. And the more he grew on me, the more I enjoyed the movie. His reactions to each defeat as Godzilla is handily kicking kaiju butt are just so outrageous. I had to laugh. And then he does a lot of evil laughing himself, and laughter is contagious. So basically, every time he laughed, I had to laugh a little too.
怪獣たちも我々の手の内にある。
So it's largely thanks to this guy and his hamming it up that I came away from the movie with a more positive feeling than I started with. The thing about a ham and cheese sandwich like this is that sometimes it's what you're craving, and sometimes you're just not in the mood. I get the feeling it's a movie you have to make a conscious decision to like. There are a lot of logical absurdities and things that make you roll your eyes. You might see it as stupid, or you might see it as, well, still kinda dumb, but endearingly so. The movie definitely feels like it's trying hard to be cool. As someone who's never been cool, I'm not one to judge, but I do wonder, was it considered cool when it came out? I'm talking about among Japanese audiences, among US audiences. I am genuinely curious. Now, there are a few other things I wanted to mention, and I'll squeeze them in here at the end. First, the music. This is the first time a Godzilla movie featured a score written by someone who wasn't Japanese. British rock composer and keyboardist Keith Emerson wrote a memorable main theme with a very 80s sound that very easily gets stuck in your head, as I can attest to. I watched this movie and heard the main theme play over and over again in the end credits, and well, that's what I heard for the next 24 hours. Speaking of music, I much appreciated the scene at Area G where the swinging music of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla plays in the background. Nice. And I had a good chuckle over the spit take, which was another sign I was starting to feel better about the movie. I personally thought the scene with this obnoxious kid was awful, but apparently some people have managed to ID all the monster figures on the floor, and just about everyone's present, which is impressive, including one turtle that bears a suspicious resemblance to Toho's kaiju rival, Gamera. I forgot to mention that, like the antagonist, the main protagonist, Ozaki, also grew on me. I found him to be one of the more likable and developed male leads, not overly goofy or dorky or arrogant, as some of them are. I also liked his reaction to two characters apparently pairing up at the end. There's not really much setup for romance there, so Ozaki's "wait, are they a thing?" face was perfect. And credits roll over footage from the movie, including shots from deleted or alternate scenes that didn't make the final cut. These unfamiliar clips caused me momentary panic, as I wondered if I was suddenly suffering from a severe memory lapse or had fallen asleep on the movie and didn't know it. Thankfully, that was not the case. I think that's about all I have to say about this one. I don't know. I liked some of it. I liked some of it in spite of myself. Other parts I felt like, oh man. My mom liked it though, so that's good. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this long-awaited review. This brings the Millennium series of Godzilla films to a close, which means we're nearing the end. But I've still got a few movies to go. To answer your questions, yes, I will be reviewing the Legendary films and Shin Godzilla in chronological order as I have done the others. But for now, I am very curious to hear your thoughts on Godzilla Final Wars, so go ahead and share your thoughts on it in the comments below if you like. I look forward to reading them, and I will see you again next time. Thanks for watching!